Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Uh, Good afternoon and hello. Welcome to our panel discussion today with the topic the CFR for English implementation in Indonesia. Thank you for your time for joining us in our Tandem-Indonesia event in this Saturday afternoon. First, I want to say hi and I want to greet all of our guest panelists. Welcome to welcome to Bu Yeni. Bu
Yeah,
Yeni,
thank
good
you.
afternoon. Good
Good
afternoon also
afternoon.
for Bu Desi. Good afternoon, Bu Desi. And good morning to Dr. Fergus O'Dwyer, who joined us from Dublin. Good morning.
Hi, how are you?
Good morning. Hi, how are you? And also good morning to Morten Hunke, who joined us from Berlin this morning. Yeah, morning in
Hello,
Berlin,
good
I mean.
morning.
Hello,
Morning,
hello,
everybody.
Morten. Good morning.
Morning.
And also for Mr. Enrico Lobrigo, good morning, good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon to you.
Hello, from the Philippines. Yes.
Right.
Thank you so much for your time to join our panel discussion and for your, yeah, for your time. Um, yeah, before we start our first presentation or first agenda for this afternoon, I want to share first, I want to inform first that this seminar or this event will be recorded, and everyone who is not agree with that or is not happy with the recording is allowed to leave the Zoom meeting room now. Okay, for our agenda, first we want to do a short survey about your background, and then the next one is a presentation about the CFR for English implementation in Indonesia by Dr. Fergus O'Dwyer and Morten Hunke. And it will followed by our discussion and question Q&A round. And then last, we will have a closing statement about everything that we have discussed during our round today. Yeah, this I want also to share some housekeeping rules for our discussion or our webinar or event this afternoon. First, what I already mentioned before, this online seminar will be recorded. The participants who have objection is please welcome to leave the Zoom meeting room. Participants are asked to turn off the microphone or stay muted during the session. Question for the speaker of the panelists can be written in the chat box. The host will summarize and me as a moderator will read the question later to the panelists to answer during the Q&A session. And if you want to ask a question directly to our panelists, you can please press the raise hand button and turn on your microphone and camera while talking. Okay, so we will start with our first agenda with our survey. So everyone, I would ask you to join with your phone and join to www.menti.com. So please go to menti.com and enter this code on the screen. I will stop sharing. Sorry, I think my internet is a little bit laggy. Yeah, it's not responding. Yeah, okay. Everyone already joined the mobi.com. Okay. Other, can the one who answer other put in the chat box what is your, or what is your profession, or what is your doing, what are you doing for a living in the chat box, so we can have the information. Oh, okay, can I repeat it first? Okay, wait. I put them in the chat box. CEFR. Sorry. Wait in another 30 seconds for the other to, it is time for the other to answer this question, and then I will proceed to the next question. Okay. Okay, the next question is, what do you know about CFR? What is coming into your mind if you hear about CFR? So please write down your answer. Oh, can someone see the screen? Oh, 20 seconds for answering the question. Okay, standardized level for English ability. It's a language scoring method that is used for TOEFL scoring. Okay, we will discuss about all of this information later during the presentation and also during the discussion. Okay, yeah, I think it's okay. Now, after we start with the Mentimeter, finish with the Mentimeter, we will start with our first presentation from Dr. Fergus and Martin Bunker. Dr. Fergus and Martin Bunker will share about the implementation of CFR English in Indonesia. So the background and the way how it will be done. Okay, then Dr. Fergus, will you share your
Yeah,
screen or should I share the
no,
screen for
I
you?
share. Just hold on there. So just give me a minute there while I
Okay,
get this ready. Okay.
okay.
So, hello everybody. I hope you're all well. Um, After I share my slides, I'm just going to let Morton work away. So, Morten, over to you, please.
Yes, thank you very much. Also, a special welcome to a friend and colleague from Japan who's just joined. I failed to inform her in advance, but now she's here. Gabi, good morning. Okay, can I see? I can't see the screen right now. Is that supposed to be like that?
Just give me that. Just changing one thing there.
Okay.
Okay, there you go, Morten.
Right, okay. So what is the CEFR? Well, that's the overriding question for today, isn't it? And I would say it's a framework. So it's a tool. It's something that can be used to describe language ability in a consistent and in a forward-looking way. So this is very important because if we are to apply things across languages, and that's what it was initially designed for, the European languages, then consistency is very important, because we can't have a situation where we have a certain level in one language and that is not at least very closely corresponding to that in another language. So that's the thing about the consistency. And the forward-looking part, I think this is also quite crucial. It's all developmental. It's all about something that is moving forward. Sort of this entire sort of concept of lifelong learning could be kind of a sort of an interesting concept that's sort of in the vicinity here. And in principle, the consistency and also the sort of ability to describe language using this framework is not dependent on where you are and where this instruction, where this learning is taking place. So theoretically, it could be applied anywhere. And I think we'll probably touch upon that. There are, as you probably are aware, there are sort of cases of sort of application and adaptation of the CEFR also in Southeast Asia, for example, Vietnam, but there's also other examples. Maybe we can talk about this a bit later. So the main goal is to have a transparent tool, to have something that is transparent not just to the teacher or the curriculum designer or the institution, but most importantly, it's something that's transparent to the learner as well. So the learner is not just learning the language, but is also sort of starting to reflect about their own learning in a way that is provided by sort of the CEFR and certain grids and descriptors. Now, this is something that also needs to sort of be acquired and learned, but if used by teachers, facilitators, then of course, this can all lead to something that, at least in principle, allows people to learn sort of more consciously, sort of to be aware of the things they're doing, to be aware of things they already can do and things that they may be not yet able to do. Okay, folks, could you move on to the next slide? Right, this is a graph trying to sort of give you an idea of what happens in the process of language learning. And what I find very good is, although most learners of languages around the world are probably sort of tend to be at the beginning stages, what you can do at that level, at this A1 level, is not an awful lot. You will know certain phrases, you will understand certain simple things, but you are not able to, most of the language, most of the things that you could potentially be using in that language you're learning are still sort of, you're still shut off from. So you are slowly expanding your horizon, you are learning more, and I think the interesting part for many, and I think that must be true for Indonesia too, is sort of this sphere between A2 and B1, where you are on the threshold, you're moving towards becoming a more proficient user. You're still quite a bit away from somebody who could sort of study in that language, but you are getting to become more independent. but you're not yet that independent. And I think most people will be familiar with these, I hope, or maybe you're not, and then please do ask questions. Something else that's crucial is at the C1, C2 level. Now, in Europe, there are these discussions. I mean, at what level should you be allowed to enter university if you come from another country and speak another language? Now, most countries in Europe say it's B2. The country I live in tends to say C1, so the requirements to study at a German university are a bit higher. Now, as you can see, it's not all uniform Europe yet. So there's still a lot of sort of diverging practices and procedures. But maybe I'll sort of stop here and move on to the next slide. Focus. Okay, so I've already touched upon quite a few of the people who may be users of the CEFR. And we've sort of tried to compile a list here. And these, we think, are the key people involved. So we have the curriculum developers, we have the exam boards. So we have people who decide on styles of learning, styles of teaching, and also on the way these are assessed and examined. And then, of course, there's teachers, very importantly, teacher trainers, because the more you have the more you involve the CEFR in terms of descriptors, but also maybe in terms of portfolios in teacher training, the more these teachers are likely to be then sort of functioning as multipliers when they actually do the teaching. And of course, the learners are involved. Now, historically, what happened in Europe is that the first people to jump onto the CEFR, at least the levels, were the publishers. Then the sort of the language testers, and slowly more curriculum developers, or at least institutions. But something that started was mostly, initially there was mostly, all of a sudden these labels appeared, so A1, A2. Not necessarily everybody knew an awful lot about what to do with it, but sort of that's the how it happened. And the important thing for us is, and the important thing is to also enable the learners themselves, the teachers themselves, to sort of show that this is not just a top-down thing. This should be a bottom-up enabler. This should be something that's utilized by everybody in the trade. And this is possible. There are interesting showcases, there are examples. So if you were to decide to start using the CEFR in some capacity in Indonesia, this is something that there are examples out there, there is help out there, and it is quite possible to kind of work towards that goal. All right, could you go to the next one, please? Okay, so different uses of the CEFR. It's about being realistic. It's about setting targets for particular groups of students. So you may have certain groups of students at some institution that are more capable and more able. So you may want to adjust the goals. So you can be quite you can be quite precise. Then it's about particular ability for particular activities. So you may be able to you may want to study somewhere. So you may want to get the academic language of that country, or that language, the target language countries, on board. And that does not mean that you could also work simultaneously in a medical profession necessarily, because that is completely different types of language being used. So it's not this universal, oh, I'm mastering the language. No, what I'm mastering is a particular sphere. The sphere of studying at university, or the sphere of working in in hospitals. So this could be quite different. Then, of course, language tests. Yes, language tests. Most language tests in and around Europe are utilizing CEFR descriptors in some capacity. Comparing qualifications. This is actually not as far gone in Europe in terms of any kind of not standardization, I don't like that word particularly, but sort of setting certain bars and sort of basically, so there is still room for improvement, even in Europe in that respect. And then I think, maybe not most importantly, but very importantly, sort of the reflection on both learning and the teaching practice. So it's something that you as a teacher, if you are a teacher, can really benefit an awful lot from if you sort of reflect using principles of the CEFR in connection to language learning. All right, let's move on to the next one.
I'll take over from here.
Yes,
Martin,
yes, you take this. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So thanks, Morton, for that. So we can see here, so there are 6 levels. So, and an important part that Morton talked about was learners who are maybe transitioning from A2, the upper levels of being a basic user to being a independent user. And then maybe it's important, what I would see, we talked about it being developmental. So here you see overarching descriptors of what the difference between a basic user and a independent user. And this is where the concrete language goals can come in. Okay, so now I'm at the level of basic user. I can understand sentences and frequently used expressions, which are probably used for basic personal and family information. Then, okay, well, I'm here now. Where am I going to go next? Then you're going to go up to understand the main points of standard input on familiar matters. So here we're looking, going from work, school, leisure. So here you can see it's what the language learner can do. It's taken away from grammar, vocabulary, which are all important, the building blocks of language. But it's particularly when this was formulated 20, 30, 25, 30 years ago, it's taking away from the language part of it, which is all important, but doing something with the language. So it's action oriented. It's focusing on action. And here you can see there is a clear way to distinguish between the levels, and importantly for the learner and for the teacher to focus on the action and to bring up and to focus on real clear actions. So these are general levels. How can teachers use this? How can this be used in the classroom? I'm going to show you an example now of how I myself use this in the classroom. This is, I teach in the foundation program. So my learners come in, they come after high school, they come from outside of Europe, and then they do a year with us. They do English for academic purposes and things like that. And then their hope is to move on after they graduate from us for 1 year. Then they go to move to start studying in university in Dublin, Trinity College Dublin, typically. So I look at them and say, okay, how well can you write? You're going to be writing a lot of essays or reports in university. How well can you do this now? You're going to be doing a lot of work over the year. So these are what we call illustrative scales. So what you see in the brown is the B2, the upper part of being a independent user up here, right? So you're going from independent user to proficient user. So that's basically where we're asking the learners to focus on. And then you can see you have a can-do statement, which this is a scale. You're going from B2, the upper part of the screen. The goal is to ultimately, when they get out of us, or maybe in 2 years' time, they can go from B2, writing an essay which develops an argument, gives reasons, weighs pros and cons. For example, you're going to focus on all of those points in order to move your writing from a independent user to being proficient. So then we're seeing, okay, we have C1, a clear, well-structured text, underline relevant salient issues. So this is self-assessment. This is what I present to the learners. Right now, how well can you develop an argument in an essay? Or how, if we're looking at the final, the point 2, give reasons to support or negate the point of view. I tell them, if you cannot do that, you can break it down: 1 star, well, reasonably well; 2 star, well; 3 star, very well. So if, for example, you can give reason to support your point of view, only maybe well at the moment, or maybe reasonably well, your goal for the next 3 months is to develop and support your point of view well. So you're getting little building blocks of the language and you're focusing on them. If we try and get to, I want to go from B2 to C1, people will just panic and there's too many things to do. So you're breaking down the language into very simple points. And also for the teacher, you can break this down. And you're very focusing much on the action. How can I give a reason to support your point of view, for example? And then everything else leads from the action. So this is a clear example of how people can use the illustrative scales, the can-do statements of the Common European Framework to bring them into the classroom. And you're getting self-assessment. I would often encourage a learning cycle where you're getting self-assessment, action, and then reflection on how well they have achieved their goal, and then formulating a new goal. And then the learning cycle begins again: self-assessment, action, writing an essay, and then reflect how well have they improved in the essay, what they need to do next. So here we see the developmental part, and this is how it can be used. So we can see this is an illustrative scale for spoken production, which is presentation, a presentation, for example. Okay, so we have illustrative scales for all of these, many scales. We had the Common European Framework document, which was published in 2000. A recent document which has been published is the companion volume, which focused very much on mediation, which means is mediating concepts, people explaining concepts and working together. So we have lots of domains of the language. A final point I want to highlight is can-do statements. You have lots of can-do statements. You can see here, okay, I can prepare a straightforward presentation on a familiar topic, okay? This is quite a long and cumbersome can-do statement, but you got to change it. You got to contextualize it for the student you are teaching. And the student should be able to contextualize it, putting them into power. So you can see this is one course I taught in Japan at the time, quite a long time ago. But here you can probably see, you can specify the type of presentation is and what the presentation is about and what the presentation should contain. So yeah, the can-do statements are here for you as a teacher, as a learner, to manipulate and contextualize for yourself, so you can bring it in and use it in a very efficient way and a forward-looking way to progress your learning. So yeah, those are the main points I just want to say. Just can-do statements should be contextualized, and also the illustrative scales in particular are a very forward-looking way to develop goals and work upon goals in a systematic way. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing now, and Judith, I guess I'm back to you to push things forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the very rich insight and information from Martin and Dr. Fergus. Yeah, before we begin with our discussion and question and answer round, I want to apologize. I have forgotten to introduce our panelists. Yeah, first, maybe Yemi. Yemi is the chairman of MGMP. This is a Musyawarah Guru Bahasa Inggris in Jakarta. And Bu Desi is the vice chairman in MGMP. Also, English teacher in SMA 70 ya Bu Desi ya. SMA 70, betul.
Actually, both of us are English teachers at SMA 70.
Oh, okay. Okay. And Morten Hunke is right now is also an English teacher in Berlin, in Anna Schule in Berlin. And Dr. Fergus is an English and sociology lecturer in Trinity College in Dublin. And last but not least, Mr. Enrico Lobigo is the licensed TELC examiner for English and German, and also operational director in Tandem Language Center in Bremen and Manila. Okay. So, okay, then we will come into our next session. This is the question and discussion round. I will read the question for this discussion round, but we also welcome all the participants. If you want to ask questions during our discussion, feel free to again write your question in the chat box or just raise your hand virtually and ask the panelists directly. Okay, we will start with our first question. This is, I think, for Bu Yeni and Bu Desi. What is the current state of teaching English in Indonesia, and why is the CFR for English will be introduced in 2021? So, maybe Bu Yeni or Bu Desi would like to answer the question.
Okay. Answer first. Maybe.
Maybe Bu Yeni first.
Yeah, I'm gonna share screen to answer that one.
Oh yeah.
Okay. This one. Okay. We use genre-based systemic functional language in our curriculum right now, and then also focus on literacy, and then the skill that we focus on receptive and productive skill, spoken and written language. That our current state of teaching in English. So actually, based on this one, we still implicitly we use CEFR, so in that one, but implicitly, not explicit by using the level like basic, intermediate, no, because based on this one, the level based on the genre that used in the in junior high school, for example, we use recount in the simple and short text, but in senior high school, the text recount used in a more complex and information for that one. That in our current curriculum. And also for the next, we are now still doing reform our curriculum by giving the level for the language teaching. We put and paste over there, phase A, B, C, D, or E, and then is that the level of that student have to reach every year. Okay, I think Miss Desi gonna add some more.
All right. So, well, can I show? Wait a second. Thank you. I will add some more information. Wait. So, well, can you see this?
Not yet, Bu.
Can you see it? Okay. Well, I will just add some more from Ibu Yeni's information. That well, actually, English as a foreign language in Indonesia, as we know that Indonesia actually is very diverse. We are multi-language country. So as Ibu Yeni said that CEFR is not used directly, but it's used implicitly. Like, wait a second, I will just, sorry. Wait. Like several years ago, actually, our government worked together with British Council. They tried to introduce this site, for example. Wait. Okay, one of the examples that our government worked together with British Council, for example. So we can use several materials which exist in this site as sources. Well, they have some levels here, start from beginner, intermediate, upper intermediate until advanced. So they are using CEFR leveling like A1, A2, B1, B2, and C1. As Ibu Yeni said, that actually we've got our own curriculum. Then we encourage the teachers to use several sources so it can level to CEFR. Wait a second, I will start to, sorry if it's a bit choppy. Okay, so can you see it? So here we go. So well, in Indonesia, English is the most favorite foreign language. Okay, so it becomes it's become compulsory subject in secondary level. So that's why it's become compulsory. And why is that so? Because we have to compete with people from the other countries. So, well, based on the curriculum of 2013, there are three objectives of English subject in junior high schools. The first one is the students are able to develop the competence in the informational literacy level. And the second, the students are aware of the essence and significance of English to enhance the competitiveness in global society. And then lastly, the students are able to develop understanding on the relation between language and culture. And then based on that, so as Ibu Yeni told us that the government decided to reform the curriculum. So we will use the leveling of CEFR. So we have, well, later on the education will be divided into 6 phases. Is that right, Bu Yeni?
Yeah.
Phase A, B, C, D, and F. Well, according to some experts, that we as a high school students, they will learn in level E and F, and then while after they finish level phase A, E and F, it equals to
B2.
B2. Okay, so that's the target of our curriculum. So, and then why is that so? Because our government also start with, I don't know whether it should be related to our topic at the moment. So our government also have a Pancasila youth profile. What is it? Pancasila youth profile. Actually, that should be owned by all students in Indonesia. So wait, I have to. Okay, so this is what our government want all the students should have. The first one is global diversity. So it means that our students will compete with people from all over the world. That's why since CEFR now is very popular, so that's why we have to apply this or implement this in our country. And then the student will be able to work together, and then they should be creative. And we also arouse critical thinking of the students, and they should be independent and also have faith and fear of one of the only God. So, well, that's why CEFR is relevant, very relevant to be implemented in our curriculum at the moment. But if, as Ibu Yeni already explained, it will be, used implicitly. So it's not, it's implied, right, Bu Yeni?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, that's what I can say. Yes, I return to Bu Yudit, please.
Okay, thank you, Bu Yeni and Bu Daisy, for the information. Okay, let's go to the second question. It's the CFR and the colonial past. There are voices raising concern as to why we need to follow and implement the CFR in Asia. A lecturer from a Malaysian university put this question with precisely this connotation. So maybe I can give this question to Dr. Fergus. Would you like to answer the question?
Yeah, thank you. So I understand people's misgivings about colonial past. As an Irish person, I fully understand that. And the best way to answer this is, if you think about colonial past is a power coming over and imposing their will upon the people of a country. So it's very much the other way. This is a framework which can be developed by the user for their own purpose. I'm actually going, Desi, would you mind sharing that last screen, the youth profile?
All right. So the youth profile. Okay, all right. Yeah. Wait.
So basically, if you look at all of these points, independence, critical thinking, being creative, working together, being multilingual and also being multicultural, these are all at the center of the Common European Framework. These are the foundations of the Common European Framework. So it's a framework established within Europe with the goals of establishing these goals, and for learners and teachers and other stakeholders to be able to achieve their goals through the framework. So it's very much a as opposed to being a colonial, something being imposed upon a people. It's a framework that the people can use to achieve their goals. So that's probably the best way I can answer that question. Thank you, Desi, for sharing that. Yeah.
All right, you're welcome.
Professors, for the very good answer for the question, very good explanation. Okay, the third question, what do you expect will be different when teaching follows the CFR and also in respect to future exams in English? This is, I think, again for to DC and Morton and also for Enrico. Maybe Daisy first can help to answer. So what are we
Maybe
expect?
Enrico,
Yeah.
maybe Enrico first.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Yeah, what can we expect?
Okay. Thank you for the question. And again, thank you for having me here in this panel discussion. I have a slide to share to answer this question. Does somebody have it to flash? Or I can also do it from my end. Ah, yeah, okay, it's there. The second, please. Yes. So what can we expect with a CFR? As this has been mentioned already by Dr. Fergus, and now we have a focus of learning objectives, can-do statements of the CEFR. And I'm very happy that I learned something new also today at the Pancasila Youth Profile that was just shared. This actually, my illustration here is just contextualizing that Pancasila Youth Profile into what a language learners should be able to do. What can they do at different levels? And it is now easier to identify what a speaker, a language learner can do depending on the language category, A1, A2, B1, B2, C1, C2. Because if we look at all those components of Pancasila Youth Profile, then the achievement of what the speakers can do as far as language learning is concerned is what can they understand when they listen to something in the target language? When they read something, what can they understand from it? How wide is the repertoire of vocabulary when they are communicating in the target language? And in terms of production, writing, and speaking as well. So we are going away from what language learners can do in terms of grammar, for example. We are going away from what words in the target language the learners can define, etc., but how they can use all of those, what they learned in the language to express themselves in terms of, for example, at A1 level, introducing themselves, dealing with daily, familiar everyday expressions and basic phrases. At A2 level, in areas of most immediate relevance, how can they communicate in that field, and so on, so forth, at B1 expectations and B2 level. So what we can expect is really the focus on what the language learners can do at each and every level. And this is, of course, something that will be very important to consider when teaching the language, because if the exam methods are patterned to the CFR, then that is what's going to be tested. What can they do with the language? Not how to fill in, for example, just the vocabulary that's part of it, or choose the right conjugation or tense of the verb, etc., etc. That's part of it. But more so, the focus really is what they can do in the language at a given level defined by CEFR. My part. Thank you.
Morten, do you want to add something?
Yes, maybe briefly. I'm thinking very much along similar lines. I think the sort of applied skills are definitely going to be sort of more at the center. I think especially if we look at level sort of A2, B1, for example, I would say myself, I'm somewhere between A2 and B1 in Japanese, country that I lived in, or Japan, a country I lived in for a few years. I never got particularly good, but sort of I can do everyday situations. And in terms of sort of topicality, once it comes to education, sort of teacher talk, sort of people discussing things to do with education and learning and language learning, I'm quite good at the uptake, but there is a lot of things in everyday life that I'm still quite at a loss at. And sort of these things, if I sort of sat down properly, I could describe these things for myself, and I could sort of utilize sort of descriptors like the ones that Fergus showed to sort of suss out more precisely for myself as obviously a professional in the field of language teaching and with experience, but I could utilize these to help myself. And I think exams are definitely going to go down that route that Enrico just sort of highlighted or sort of lined out. Already we're seeing these things in terms of sort of university entrance exams. Sort of university entrance exams are quite, so it's all about the skills related to, I was talking about this earlier, sort of higher education, academia. So are you able to engage in not just listening to a lecture and sort of taking notes, but that is part of it as well. But there's also other things, like, for example, if you are supposed to do group work, are you actually able to organize yourself in terms of sort of group work? Are you able to sort of play your part as part of a team that produces something? Could be a poster, could be a presentation, could be anything. And I think we're not going to abandon sort of grammar and these things entirely. I mean, there is a sort of there is for example, the Cambridge vocabulary profile and grammar profile. I mean, these are banks that can be accessed. So if you are working with teachers who are used more to sort of people rote memorization, sort of learning grammar, there is something for these people there too. So you can offer them access, especially if it's to do with English. Other languages is a bit more complicated or not as readily available, but it's quite doable to sort of even rope in these people and sort of say, okay, here are things that are more familiar to you. But the focus is really on the sort of applied skills, on the abilities that people develop. And of course, they could be written, they could be spoken. There's also receptive elements in there. Yes, I think I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Welcome. Daisy, maybe you can answer this question more particular in Indonesia, for Indonesia.
For Indonesia, well, actually, as Ibu Yeni has already told us, that actually CEFR hasn't been implemented so far, but we use it just explicitly. Oh, sorry, yeah. So we just, combine or take some, what do you call it? We don't take it just the whole CEFR like that, but we just grab several things from it. So so far we use TOEFL or IELTS, something like that. So that's why, well, I think it will start. So Indonesia will start to use this immediately, Bu Judith. And then if we can go on to number 6, for example, is it okay?
Oh, we go directly. Yeah.
Okay, because I mean it relates also. It relates to the next question. Well, I think I also was a former student of teacher training program IKIP Jakarta for my bachelor degree. Well, as far as I remember, at that time when I was a college student, our government also implemented a new curriculum at that time, and then we as the teacher, our students, college student at that time, we were trained with the new curriculum. And then the next 10 years, when our government also applied another new curriculum, the students of the teacher training program also was introduced to the new. And then, well, actually, we are not allowed to say anything about it, right, Bu Yeni? But well, the government actually will.
Released yet, not released.
Yeah, it hasn't been released yet. But
Okay.
yes, this year the government will release the new one, but we are not allowed to say anything because we are just English teachers. But when the government release this, I believe that it will relate to the university. The university will prepare the students to implement this curriculum for their students.
Okay, so
Yes, Judith. And Ibu Yeni will add some information also.
Yeah, sometimes the problem is not about whether university education gonna apply the changing the curriculum. Not about that one. Sometimes it's about the personnel of the teacher, even though they got it in university, and when come to the field, into the school, yeah, just teach as traditional. I mean, what they got before with their teacher, studying English, they also did the same thing. Do the same thing with their student. Is that the problem? Most of the problem in English teaching in Indonesia. So the problem also finding sources, resource. That's difficult. That's make teacher change. Even though they got that from university, they change because of the situation. So that for me, usually university follow what the government did. Yeah.
Yeah, if I may add another thing. Well, as I do agree with what Ibu Yeni said. Well, actually, you know, the ability of the English teachers in Indonesia is really, you know, like a gap. So those who live in the big cities, for example, their skill is higher than those who live in remote areas. And besides, we also, I mean, we who live in big cities, we are provided by good facilities. Like we are, you know, we have very strong connection with, for example, like real regional language from U.S. government, for example, and also from British Council. So we've got many sources and many training from them. While for those who live in remote area, they don't have the same facilities. And then most of them, it will relate also to the next questions, whether we use books or not. Yeah, whether we use textbook or not. Well, actually, for us who live in big cities, we just grab some, you know, sources from the internet or from many different sources, which is provided by, for example, British Council and also Relo, and many other sources like Cambridge, because our school used to run Cambridge curriculum as well. But those who live in remote area, they will, you know, depend on the books provided by the government only, where the sources is very limited. So, you know, that's why the gap is really high. And then it's not only happens to the students, but also the teachers. And then if I may say, you know, the more creative the teachers, you know, the better they provide materials for the students. Okay, that's what I can say,
Okay,
Judith.
so it's also already answered the question with the textbook, ya Bu ya. Okay. Okay, for the next question, what does the CEFR stand for and why was it established? So Morten, can you help us to answer the question?
I'm not entirely sure I should be talking about this at length because I think we already sort of spoke about certain things. One thing that jumped to my mind that's very important when Fergus spoke about sort of the issue of things becoming sort of a second colonial wave. I think you need to sort of bear in mind that the CEFR was established in a Europe where there are a lot of different languages being spoken. And it was never aiming to standardize anything in a sort of, in a sense of leveling things, but rather sort of to, there are sort of certain underlying principles behind the CEFR and the European language portfolio. For example, there is this goal that's stipulated by the Council of Europe that every European should be able to speak his or her own language on plus 2 other European languages. So that's a sort of, that's the approach. I'm not saying it's super successful. In some countries, it definitely is. I mean, if you go to the Baltics, you will find that it's probably, most people will go beyond that. They will sort of speak 3 or 4 other languages quite regularly. It's not quite as true in sort of large countries like Germany or France necessarily, but so there is ideology behind it, but not ideology that is trying to impose itself, but rather it's an enabler, as I said before. It's supposed to offer something to everybody. And as Fergus pointed out quite rightly, it needs to be contextualized. And if I may be allowed to move on to the next question already, but maybe Judith wants to sort of read it out before I say anything about this.
Okay, with the examples of implementation of CEFR outside of Europe. Yeah, you can.
Yes,
you can continue with the questions.
Okay, I'm going to try and share my screen because I want to show you one slide, if that's okay. Mm-hmm. And this is the one. So just as a sort of, I'm not going to answer it fully. I mentioned Vietnam earlier, and you will find examples of they had a very ambitious 2020 sort of program in Vietnam to implement sort of principles of the CEFR for English teaching until last year. In the book on the right-hand side, you will find a sort of slightly more lengthy article about how they were, how teachers themselves kind of, what kind of pressure there was for teachers and how teachers were helped to sort of enable themselves to kind of follow along with that implementation. There are also definitely examples, multiple examples in that book from Japan, where the CEFR may not be fully implemented in any sort of national capacity, but the CEFR J is a very interesting sort of project that Japan has been working on for many, many years and spent a lot of money on. And they've come up with very interesting resources for sort of teaching mostly English in Japan. So there are things out there. And then on the left-hand side, you see the CEFR journal. That is something that sort of Fergus and Gabby, who joined us, we've been working on for a few years now, and issue 3 has come out. It's a journal that is trying to showcase all sorts of different things. I mean, we have a news section where you can just report on a sort of a research project you just started, or maybe you're halfway through. There are academic articles in it. We are looking at various things related to the CEFR. It's supposed to be very, very bottom up. I mean, we really try to work with contributors, help them, guide them along. So this is a resource you can take a look at. If you just type CEFR journal into any browser, you will find us. The other book I added, because this is also has been done by sort of amongst others, Gabi Schmidt, who's mentioned here, and this book is also very hands-on. It's very it's looking at things in a very applied manner, and so there are experiences out there that you can read about. You can get involved yourself as well. You can be somebody who becomes part of a community of people, working with the CEFR. All this is out there and is quite possible. So I would like to encourage you, don't just see the obstacles. There's lots of chances and there's lots of experience out there, and there's lots of people who are quite happy to help. And also in scenarios and situations that are not too dissimilar from Indonesia, I suspect, although I don't know too much about Indonesia, but we've heard a little bit about the problems. So I think this is the way forward, us helping one another, supporting one another. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Martin. And Enrico, maybe you want to add something to the question. Do we have examples of successful implementation of CEFR?
Yes, sure, Judith. And I have also just one slide for it, and you could help me share it. That would be this one. So I would approach the question more from the practical point of view, having been running a language school, Tandem Language and Training Center in Manila in the Philippines for the past 4 years, focusing on German language program for healthcare professionals. For our purpose, we can imagine that this is an English language program for healthcare professionals instead. But my actual experience in the German language, that's why I am using this slide. So as you can see, we have to follow all those CEFR highlights or learning objectives per level to come up with a program that is viable in the German market. So the participants here are healthcare professionals who are intended to work in healthcare facilities in Germany at some point within a year after they've started learning the language from zero. So the entire program actually lasts for 8 months, A1 until B2, but full time. So they have a language program of 4 class hours every day, and they would need another 4 to 5 hours every day as well to do their homework and do self-study, learn on their own. So basically the objective of the program is not just to pass a kind of examination, like in our case, health examination, but the objective is also to have satisfied customers in Germany who can observe from the language participants that the proficiency level really matches what they are expecting from the definition, from the very definition of what's a B1, what's a B2 per se. So more than a theoretical objective of having the language learner pass the examination, it goes beyond to meeting the expectations from those who are actually going to be engaged in working with those language learners professionally after the program. So here, as you can see, I focus first on the general language, A1, A2, B1, because here they should learn the basic of the grammar, the vocabularies used in everyday lives, etc. And then when they arrive at B1, they learn first the general grammar, general vocabularies expected of B1, and then they specialize later on. Now, this is very important because it will be too much, as I have observed, for the learners to learn grammar while at the same time they are going deep into the technical language part that they need. Because if we look into the CEFR definition, B1, participant or language learners are expected to understand the main points of clear standard input on familiar matters regularly encountered in work, leisure, school, etc. This becomes a bit problematic if we are dealing with a heterogeneous group. In my case, we are dealing with a homogeneous group. They are all healthcare professionals. But how do we treat that in language teaching if our participants consist of, let's say, bakers, hairdressers, carpenters, healthcare professionals, chef, cook, drivers, seafarers, etc. So how do we deal with that? Then my approach basically is to deal with specialization, because it is expected at B1 that the language learner should be able to converse in that language as used in day-to-day work. And when it comes to B2, it's the same thing. Then they should be able to interact with a degree of fluency and spontaneity that makes regular interaction with native speakers quite possible without strain for either party. This is personally for me a little bit controversial because even if we learn a foreign language in a different country for such a long time, and for the first time we go to that country where that language is being spoken, we still need a certain level of adjustments there. So the commitment in achieving B2 level or C1 level outside the country where that language, where that target language is spoken is still quite controversial for me, because this requires a certain exposures. In fact, high exposure with native speakers. And maybe if we are talking about English, that would be easier because there are a lot of English native speakers scattered all over the world. But if we are talking about language such as German, then this becomes extra challenging. And I would just like to add to this slide is this is the beauty of CEFR. It doesn't matter what language we are talking about. It can be English or German. But if we talk about a successful program at the end of the day, they should be comparable because of how the scale is defined. So thanks.
Okay, thank you, Enrico. Dr. Fergus, would you like to add something for the example? Do you have any example for successful implementation of CEFR?
Outside of Europe, you could have you'd have so many, and I think what Enrico has talked about there is something that has been replicated all around the world. And I know obviously Enrico is very specialized towards a special point, but you have many other people who have implemented that on their own. But beyond what Morten has mentioned, like there's things happening in Tunisia, South America, pretty much globally. Any informed language educator professional will be in some shape or form implementing the principles and processes suggested by the Common European Framework. So, and that's just the reality. So I'm not going to keep on giving you more and more examples. That's probably the best way I can answer the question, beyond the many examples provided by Morten and Rico already. So, and I think many people, just coming back to the Japan example, like what they have done in Japan, like they discovered that in Japan, for example, the learners were struggling hard to get motivation because they could not realize they were making progress in learning a language. And it's a common problem. They learned language for a long time in junior high school, and university, but then they don't have confidence in the language and they're not making progress. But as a result, the Japanese broke in like 8.1.1, 8.1.2, 8.1.3. And then they broke down the can-do statements because of that. And then as a result, people could see progress, little steps, and it really helped the learners. But what's been developed in Japan is being brought back to Europe. And if you look at the latest version of the Common European Framework, the ZV, the companion volume, they have implemented data progress. So you could probably see what's been implemented in beyond Europe is coming back. So I think if one thing I could do about I would change the title. The Common European Framework, I would take the Europe out of it. I would say evaluative or something, or just to say that it's gone beyond Europe at this point. It's just a framework that's used by language professionals all around the world. So and I can see a huge development for Indonesia, both in the cities and beyond, if the principles and processes are integrated into language classrooms and language educators, and most importantly, the language learners. So the best way I can answer that answer.
Okay, thank you, Marcus. Okay, before we come to the closing statement, I have to mention before that we will have maybe 10 minutes max for another question. We have some question in the chat box from our participant. So first has come from Miss Minerva. She just graduated from University of Hull, UK. And she has two questions, but I think the question we have already answered before. So her question was, do the English teacher in Indonesia also do the CEFR before they start the job? And the second question was, in using the CEFR, the government will make a new book related to the CEFR. I think Yeni maybe can help to answer the question.
Okay. The new book. Yes, of course, based on the new curriculum prepare, but actually the government prepare teachers staff prepare his toolkit for teaching. The book they're gonna prepare by the government, not a kind of textbook, but just a kind of e-book. In form of ebook in the we call that sources for teachers.
Okay, so it would be can be accessed online.
Online, yeah.
The material.
Yeah, the material of them one.
Okay.
So, the government hope the teacher prepare by themselves based on the condition of their student at school. Not Papa is prepare the book for the whole students in Indonesia. Sometimes it's not, for example, like what the teacher said before. We are in a district, we have only that the book that prepared by the government, only one page, for example. We can add some more that happen. So that the government really want teacher itself provide the answer in cooking.
Okay, so it would be online.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But is the teacher need to do the CFR exam before they start the job with the new implementation of the CFR later?
Yeah. So far, no.
Okay.
No, that not using
It's
CR.
not necessary. Okay.
Necessary.
Okay, thank you, Puyeni.
Yeah.
Okay, the second question is from Miss Nurdiani. If we use CEFR in formal school, it is possible the placement test to know about the 6th level in CEFR for the students, because we will give the same materials when we teach our students in the class. Thank you. Yeni or Budesi maybe can help, or maybe Enrico maybe can help.
Pardon?
If in Indonesia, use the CEFR in formal school, it is possible to have a placement test to know about the 6th level in CEFR.
Yes, there are placement tests, and there are a lot of proficiency assessment level tests developed by publishers as well. So at this point, we've been discussing about your issue in Indonesia about materials, that it is probably difficult to get them, and we're talking about books. But when we're talking about books, most likely we are only dealing with reading and writing abilities, but it's more than that. There's also the listening part and the speaking part, and that those things are generally addressed by new media. And it is very important at this point to really work with multimedia resources, books that have also audio CDs and online research resources that also cater to develop the language learners' ability to listen and speak in the language. They need to hear the tones, for example, so that the brain can learn how particular sounds can be produced that are otherwise not present in their native language. I don't know if I'm answering the question, but for a certain peculiarities in Indonesia, that would be very difficult for me to talk about that, but I can only imagine that is that there are similarities with my experience in the Philippines.
Okay, maybe
Yeah.
it's impossible in our class with 33 students. We're gonna teach back on their level in the government school. Because what student right now my class 40 students in class. So in 40 students, I teach 10 classes in one level. So really impossible to
have the
to
level
know
of each
each level of the
yeah.
students. Okay, so we're gonna just we want to know the average of our students. We're gonna prepare the material that's suitable for that one. That's what I have done so far. Okay, thank
Is it
you.
also possible for the students to take the proficiency or the placement test by themselves and then?
There are. Well, there should be things for this. I haven't explored much in the English language, but I can imagine it would be very similar. So each modern, well, I wouldn't say all of them, but many of the modern textbooks being used in learning a language, they have this test. So they just have to go into a particular link and do the test by themselves to check if their proficiency level is sufficient for the use of a particular material at that level. Is it A2, for example? If they are doubting whether they are at that level already, are they A1, still A1 or A2 already, they can take this assessment that is coupled with a particular A2 textbook, and there they can see if they are ready for that. And I agree with Yannick, it is really very difficult to do assessment that where we have to check how they are in terms of speaking and listening, because, well, we have to speak to each of the participants if they are, and I do it in my language school. I have 300 students in my language school, and it takes 3 days to finish all of them, and I have a lot of examiners to do the speaking part for that. But that is our commitment to our client. We assess all these 4 aspects, whether they are really at their level. So there's no other way but to really spend those time with the students. But otherwise, they're off the shelf. We can do online assessment just to have more or less a feel where the students are, and that we can find out how much they've understood in the exam, their vocabulary level and grammar level, etc. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay.
Could
I think you have to go. Yeah.
I don't want to cut this very lively discussion short. The only problem is I scheduled with an hour, and I will need to leave the call quite shortly. I think you should continue if you are able to sort of if you've got more time. I would like to say a massive thank you to Tandem-Indonesia for inviting me and for having me here. And, I posted a few links in the chat as well. So there's a couple of things I forgot to mention. Journal, it's all freely downloadable. It's open access, so anybody can look at anything. It's not there's no sort of paywall or anything like that. Thanks also to Fergus particularly, and to Enrico and all the other speakers. It's been an honor. It's been a pleasure, and I hope we may meet again like this, or perhaps even one day in person to facilitate and further sort of training and teaching and learning going on with the help of the CEFR. And I would be delighted if I were to be able to meet you again. So thank you so much from my part, and I wish you all the best. Have a nice Saturday evening or have a good Saturday.
Before you go, we can do the group photo first, group picture before you go. So I would ask everyone to turn on your camera, please. And I will capture the screen to take the group picture. So everyone, please turn on your camera. Okay. Yeah. Okay, thank you so much, Morton. Thank you for your time. Okay, the last question, we will do it quite quickly. Okay, it is from Pak Widianto. Dear our panelists, I was wondering how English teachers should perform in delivering English literature as it required by the curriculum in associating with CEFR in online learning. Could you also possibly give the CEFR rubrics to apply? Maybe Fergus, can you maybe help to answer the question? Because I think everyone, most of the school in all around the world is doing online teaching right now. So this is, I think the question is more for the current situation. Fergus, if you can help to answer this.
Okay, I'm just looking at the question now. I just want to make, if I understand the question correctly. So how should English teachers, they should deliver English literature classes? Why, Danto, could maybe you just explain what exactly the question is about? You can open your mic if you like.
Oh, Pak Widianto, maybe if you can ask directly and explain more. Masih nggak dengar, we cannot hear you. Sorry, Pak Widi.
You know, as it is stated in the curriculum of Indonesia by the government that teachers are required to fulfill and deliver the English literature, which is as mentioned like Ibu Desi just now, which require about creativity and others. What I mean is we are having problem here, as Ibu Desi stated, and also Ibu Yeni. We have limited resources, especially in our province, that entangle not only the teachers but also students in rural areas. How could you give me the tricks, or advice in delivering teaching, learning in the online classroom, dealing with literature, especially for secondary level? There are, for example, I have already applied what is it, a kind of a task of listening using Google Classroom, but what is it? The result is not satisfying. What's the material should be adopted with the kind of situations, as if we are supposed to give the student interesting materials or interactive teaching learning. That's what I mean. Thank you very much.
Particularly if you're going to focus on literature, which I mean, I presume it's the written language, and probably writing from there. It'd be very hard for me to say, okay, what is the interesting material? I would go back to the student and say, oh, what do you want to read? What do you need to read? And I would, rather than you bringing materials into the classroom, I would get the students bringing materials into the classroom. Listen, like many of my students in Ireland are interested somehow about Japanese manga comics. I know I have a colleague who teaches Japanese, and she doesn't actually, she teaches Japanese in a high school. She doesn't reuse any materials. She lets the student bring in materials, manga, comics that they're interested in, and that's what they study. So I'm not suggesting you study Japanese manga in your English classroom, but I would say, what do the students need to learn? What do students want to learn? Maybe they don't know what to learn, but you could brainstorm. Listen, these are the things. If you want to study English, what do you want to learn? And you get a list of 5 or 10 topics that you want to learn about. So, for example, it could be one would maybe want to learn about American football. Another one would want to learn about sustainability and how people use sustainability in farming, or there's so many topics that could come up. And then you could maybe every week bring a paragraph or bring a page on each topic, and we could go together as a class together and study that. So you're bringing it back to the classroom, bringing it back to the teachers, bringing it back to the students, most importantly. So the best material is material that is interesting for the students. Of course, it doesn't have to be all created by you or created by the students. There's lots of material available. And the important point is, okay, you can get material from the internet. How can we make that accessible to an A2 student? An A2 student will be the top of a basic user. So you're probably going to have to scale it down. And there's actually good tools available online for you to feed in a text and say, oh, listen, this text is actually, majority of it is suitable for C1 because the vocabulary and grammar. So then maybe you need to scale it down and you need to bring the level down, like bring in synonyms and replace words. So highly technical words are replaced by more simpler words or just even deleted, but still the concepts are the same. And so that way, rather than taking material directly from the internet, you probably need to take it, feed it into the tools that help you bring it down, and then you can break it down so it's more learner friendly and it's more suitable for the learner. You're coming back to maybe zone of proximal development where you're making it, if an A2 learner, maybe they should be studying vocabulary and grammar that is suitable at maybe at the B1 level. So if a text is at a C1 level, bring it down to a B1 level. So to summarize, the best way is A, get what the learners are interested in, or in the case of what Enrico, what they need to study. If people want to be a nurse in Germany or studying using a nurse through the use of German, the German language, they need to have B1 for nurses. Or that's based on the need. And then if it's based on the interest, it's getting what the learners want to learn and then bringing it down to a level that is accessible to them. So apologies, a bit of a long answer, but that's the best way I can answer.
I'm gonna add some more giving tips for online teaching. Maybe what Widianto said is not about literature. Maybe what you mean is what I talked about, genre-based, so text-based, not literature. Okay, it is text-based. For example, what class are you teaching, Pak Widianto?
I'm teaching the second year and the third year students, especially in that one, a kind of English literature as required by the curriculum.
So it's lintas minat or peminatan, I think. Right,
Yeah.
Pak Widianto? So you're teaching in peminatan, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so that's what he's trying to say.
Okay. The literature, actually not much literature available at the 11.
Sorry, a little bit. Yeah, the voice a little bit shaky.
Yeah. Okay. 11th grade. It's about pupil, ya, Pak Widianto.
Sorry, Bu, your voice is not clear because of.
Yeah.
Or perhaps later on, Pak Widianto, you can contact us. I'll give you our numbers so you can join our group. So well, here in this room, we also have LV. LV is one of, what is it? So, how the expert also, our colleagues from English Teachers Association of Jakarta. She's also national instructor. So we can give you, well, for Fergus or Enrico, for those who live abroad, well, actually in Indonesia we have two different kind of English. So the first one for high school, we have compulsory English that should be taken for all students. So we just name it English, and we also have like English literature, but actually it's not pure literature, but also have several grammar, something like that. So the second one actually is taken for those who have a major in language. So, well, in high school in Indonesia, we have three different major. The first one is science, and then the second one is social science, and the third one is language. Okay, so for those who take language, they may have additional English, and then the focus is in literature. I think that's what Pak Widianto has trying to say.
Okay.
So they mostly focus on several grammars and also literature, but it's a basic literature. So it's nothing compared for those in the US, because I attended several TESOL convention as well in Texas, and also in I forget the name of the state, my God. Well, anyway, it's completely different from what is meant by literature in native countries.
Probably, maybe, I think we won't get to a good answer to the question right now, but I'm sure, I mean, if we sat down and looked at it, and the important point is contextualization. If we found a way that we contextualize the learning, and then we could see the learners, you're here right now, and this is where you need to be, where you could be in the next year, and these are the little steps that you could take, and relate those steps to the Common European Framework, the can-do statements. Yeah, it would be very easy to do that, what you're trying to do, but it would obviously, you need to look at the materials and the needs. So there's probably a learner needs assessment and things like that. But it maybe, hopefully another day we could get to the bottom of that question. Yeah.
But I do agree to teach something interesting like manga, for example. I still remember when I was in Japan, I also tried, I got the opportunity also to teach elementary school students. And at that time, I gave them, trick or treat during the Halloween. And the kids really enjoyed it because, it's interesting for them. So I do agree with it, Fergus. If you teach something interesting for the students, they will pay attention to you, and they will love, they really want to join your class. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. So I think we slowly running out of time, but we still have to come to our close statement. We make it very quick. Maybe for each of the panelists can answer the close statement questions. If you had the chance to provide a training to Indonesia English teacher, what would be the three most important aspects for the training? So maybe we start with Enrico first.
Okay, sure. I have a slide for that.
Okay,
My last slide, just one slide.
Yeah, I will put it on the screen. So
Yeah. As for myself, I mean, I have to make this very, very current because this has affected our language school as well, and I have learned a lot of things that I think I can only say this will be the future. So if there are three things that I would like to emphasize, it is really familiarization with the CEFR, to have a very relevant language program targeted to learning objectives as per level, whatever level it is that we would like to achieve with our participants. That's one. And blended learning also and consists of instructor-led sessions and online learning sessions. So it will be CFR, instructor-led sessions and online learning sessions. Instructor-led sessions, of course, are very important to have that either. It doesn't matter if this is done online or face-to-face. This gives us a possibility to personally ask teachers check the progress of our participants, and online learning sessions is something that is at the moment for me is going to be very inevitable if we are doing online courses. So this will give our students an opportunity to learn by themselves, do a lot of self-study, and there are a lot of platforms. I can share with you some as well, depending on the textbook that you choose, who's publishing that. Many of them have learning management system that can really be very useful for this in implementing a blended learning concept in online teaching. But of course, this requires a lot of training for the teachers, and I hope that we can work also all together on this. Our teachers at Tandem Philippines also had to undergo a lot of training to migrate from classic face-to-face language teaching to blended learning that's 100% online. And because of the pandemic, face-to-face is not possible, but we have to move on with the program. And it has been successful so far, and our program has gone uninterrupted. There are resources available in the market in terms of materials, but of course they cost money, so funding can be another issue, and I don't know really how to discuss that, but there are resources. So I hope that yeah, we can work all together on this and to see what could be the best practice in implementing a CFR-focused program, instructor-led sessions, and online learning sessions for language learners.
Thank you, Abhikora. Yeni, maybe you can give your insight for this question. So, the most important aspect for the training.
Okay. Is that clear now, my voice?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, okay. The first thing in the training for teachers, the ability of the teachers to use the language itself need to improve the teachers' proficiency. And then the second one, how to write an exam and test item that based on the CFR that need when doing the training, and also how to grade the student, to give feedback. It is very important to give feedback when the student is doing the task, how to give feedback. How do we know what level is that that needs to be in the training? Okay, I think that's the three things.
Thank you, Yeni. And Daisy?
Well, I think it's wrapped up already by Bu Yeni. It's all the same. Yeah.
Okay, then Fergus, would you like to give the final closing statement for our very rich, full, and rich, full
Sure,
discussion today?
Yeah, no problem. I've just put probably 3 keywords there, and I just actually share a slide there. Probably the keywords I would say in terms of teacher training would be autonomy, stroke independence, contextualization, and mediation, and these can be taken in several ways. First, to get into the first one, maybe autonomy, independence. First is a whole principle of the CEFR is learner autonomy, so that the learners are in control. So it's not a teacher standing at the top of the classroom and giving them grammar. Okay, that is necessary sometimes, but it's the teacher facilitating the learning and the students driving the learning and bringing their learning together, and taking once maybe after they take a test, after they take a learning course, that they are able to independently learn afterwards. So, and that's not easy to, if you transition from a very teacher-led classroom to a classroom that is driven by the teacher, by the student, it's hard to make that transition. So a part of the training should be able to let go of control, that the student have to be controlling the matter. So that's one part I would have to say. Contextualization, I covered that this at the beginning, the way beginning from the can-do statements. There's no point in throwing can-do statements from the CEFR directly at the students. You must contextualize it together with the students. And that's another process that may be challenging to get with. And there's, the CEFR must be contextualized by each individual student, by each individual teacher, and by each individual maybe school, and then you're going above each country and maybe region. So contextualization is a huge part of training, and how to suitably contextualize the resources of the Common European Framework. And probably the last point is just mediation. This is taken on several ways. Mediation is a huge concept in the new companion volume. And this is just being able to, and it's probably related to the way the world has changed in the last 20 years since the publication of the original Common European Framework in 2000. It's just mediation, people coming between, and there's online communication and people explaining concepts and understanding concepts, and also mediation. Maybe like the training should be able to, how the teacher can mediate concepts and come in between and help the learners be in the future to effectively mediate. Mediate just basically means to come in between and to bridge the gap between 2 points. A translator, or it would be a good translator, or an interpreter is a good example of someone who mediates. But mediation is at the center of many parts of communication, and particularly modern communication. So the concept of mediation and how mediation can be brought into the classroom, and how learners can learn how to effectively mediate, will be an important part of any teacher training program. So those are the 3 main points. There's several ways, and it's quite a lot. You could have a whole workshop about any of these concepts, but just it's autonomy, contextualization, and mediation.
Maybe
Thank you.
We can plan for the next event of Tandem-Indonesia. Okay, thank you so much. So we come to the end of our event. I have posted a link in the chat box. That's I would like you to complete our survey, and also please put your name and email address for us to send you the participation certificate. And also I will share with you our English program with Waterhunke as a teacher. So we have level A2. so English course for level A2 CFR. So we will have, we already have 40 registration member, registered participant for our course. So it's 2 full classes, and we will provide e-learning tools and textbook, and it's 2 months free English course. So if you are interested, you still can register for the course. Okay, so then I think we are now coming to the end of the event. So again, thank you very much for all the panelists, Sukuyeni, Pudesi, Enrico, and also Dr. Fergus. Thank you so much for joining the Tandem-Indonesia panel discussion today. And also I want to mention that our recording for the session will be uploaded to the YouTube account of Tandem-Indonesia. And yeah, again, thank you very much for your time in this Saturday afternoon, and we hope that we can meet you again in our next event. Thank you so much. Bye bye, everyone. Have a
Thank
great
you.
weekend.
Thank you.
Great
Thank you
weekend.
very
Bye.
much. Thank you,
Nice weekend.
Emon. Thank you, Fergus. Thank you, Judith.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank